Hello everybody. I hope you can hear me properly. Yes? Okay, cool. So, thank you for coming for this session related to microgrid. I know it has been 2 very, very long days with a lot of things, a lot of EcoStruxure, and we are bringing a new one, that is EcoStruxure for Microgrid. So, it's a very new subject maybe for some of you, or some of you are being experts. But at the end, it's not only how microgrid are connecting new energies with the customers, but as well how the energy ecosystem is being changed thanks to microgrid. We are moving from a grid providing electricity to customers to a grid of grids connecting customers. And the microgrid are being some of the different elements. So microgrid is a subject that is having a lot of impact on the technology side, on the customer side, on the regulation side, and we think we need to have a grid panel of experts to be able to, let's say, handle the problem with all the challenges, the opportunities from all the angles and share practices. So for the panel, I have a wonderful panel, and we have Michael from Bloomberg, who will be sharing with us his vision about how things are moving, how the ecosystem are moving, the regulation. So Michael is from Bloomberg New Energy Finance. Is in charge of, let's say, analyzing how new technologies are disrupting the energy market. But he has a long experience as well, or maybe not that long, 2 decades in McKinsey as a consultant. And prior to that, he has been working with the UK government in the ministry, helping the deregulation of energy. So I think he can see as well the point of view of the energy system and provide all the insight. Elena González from ACCIONA will provide us the vision from the industry and how we're engaging with the customers. And I think it's a very, very important subject as a developer and operators of energy system. So Elena, you're in charge of energy efficiency in ACCIONA, and prior to that, she has been in charge, managing director of the ESCO Energy Service Company Association in Spain. So having as well a good experience and a good vision on how the industry is putting forces together. On my side, I am from Matthieu Mounier, I'm from Schneider Electric. I've been in Schneider for the last 18 years. And I'm in charge of the microgrid activity, and I hope I will provide some insight related to the technology challenges. The way we will be conducting the discussion will be a first introduction on technology myself, then Michael, and then Elena, and then we hopefully engage a debate with you. We'll be providing microphones so that everybody can speak and discuss with us. So, technologies. Our big ideas, our bold ideas, is that in the future, microgrid will be sort of cornerstone of the energy systems. That is, we are moving, thanks to integration of local energy and local usage, we are moving into something that will be much more a mesh grid, a grid of grids, with microgrid connecting to each other. So it's not only a question on how we are integrating local energies on site, is how all the system will be interacting together, interacting with the grid, interacting with all actors. The main question is, why are we doing all of this? Why microgrid? It is basically, and Michael will illustrate this much better than I do, that now we have renewable energy and distributed energy, decentralized energy, that are becoming cheaper and more effective than the big one. So when you are installing and connecting local energies with the grid or with these customers, you are getting an energy that is becoming cheaper as well, because you have more local energy that can be used locally. You will be more resilient, more reliable, and more sustainable, because thanks to microgrid, you will ease integration of renewable energy within the system. So it's all this combination. Now, yes? Okay. Now, And sorry, I will enter a little bit into the technology. How microgrid will be enabling this, let's say, this creation of value. We can see there are three kinds of microgrid. You have microgrids that can be on my left here, completely disconnected from the grid, so they will be islanded electrical system working autonomously. And here we can see example application in electrification in Africa or mining systems that are working completely independently. And here we have issues about maintaining the stability or improving the level of renewable part of the mix. On the other side of the equation, we have the grid-tied microgrid. A grid-tied microgrid is a hybrid power system where you will use local energy like PV, like storage, as a complement to your supply from the grid. You will be able to use them to improve your energy cost. You can improve your energy balance, so you can do self-consumption, tariff optimization, etc. And we can see application in countries like Europe, where it's really critical to have smart building as an example. And in the middle, we have what we call islandable microgrid. I think this is a little bit the most complex one, but maybe the one having, let's say, the more impact in terms of business case. You have microgrids that can be connected to the grid, so when you are connected to the grid, you can improve electrical bill, ease integration of renewable, and when there is a blackout, you will be able to disconnect from the grid and run in off-grid mode. So when you are combining optimization and off-grid, you are coming to a system that is becoming highly resilient. And this is something we are requiring now when our electrical systems are with stress and we need more resilient systems. So it will be for different applications. Now, technology-wise, what is a microgrid? It's relatively simple. The microgrid is the integration of electric distributed energy resources on site. So the microgrid will connect the solar panel with the wind, with control, with electrical storage. But this is not the only one. Here we only see, let's say, the microgrid stuff. We don't think about the grid of grids. What is important is as well how this microgrid will be connected to the main grid, and how a customer who is producing electricity at a given time can share electricity or share resources or share services with his neighbor or with the grid. So it's a brick that will be used for further development. Technology-wise, what are the key technologies we will see in a microgrid? And where, at the end, Schneider Electric, we are working on these solutions. A very important one is the generation, because at the end, microgrid is about integration of local energies. So here we'll be speaking about solar panel, but not only, as well, can be wind turbine for more industrial microgrid. We'll be speaking about electrical storage. Electrical storage is important brick for microgrid, not only because we can put electricity in your battery when the sun and use it during the night, but as well because it can provide stability for application like off-grid application. We are as well including in a microgrid the balancing of the grid with load management, how we can, let's say, charge the electric vehicle when you have sun and do something else when you don't have sun, so it's adequation between production and generation. And for that, what we need in a microgrid, in addition to the energy resources you will be adding, is the capability to make integration of these energy resources. Integration meaning electrical connection, you can connect them to the grid without impacting the performance of your system. It's as well what we call microgrid automation. It's how you will reconfigure your microgrid if you have the grid or you don't have the grid, or if you are losing, as an example, one element. So the reconfiguration is something quite tricky in a microgrid, and this is something we are working on. And the last but not least is the optimization. Optimization What does that mean? It means that the best storage in the world, if you are using it badly, so if you are putting electricity in your storage when it's expensive and using it when it's free, you are losing money. But if you are doing it well, if you are using your storage at the right time, if you are charging your electric vehicle at the right time, you are saving a lot of money. And if you are able to interact with the grid as well. That's why microgrid optimization is so important, and this is something that cannot be done by itself. It should be holistic. You should consider price of electricity, maybe the need of the grid, the need of your neighbors, etc., etc. So the three elements for the integration of energy resources in a microgrid are electrical integration, automation, and optimization. And this in conjunction with storage, load management, and solar generation, and other kind of generation. Now, one of the questions we certainly all have is basically what kind of application do we see microgrid? A lot of people think, okay, microgrid is a micro electrical system, this is for off-grid, this is for electrification, this is for Africa. Yes, so this is one of the axis we are working on, so called access to energy. And here it's very important because it's not only bringing electricity to the people that is very important, but as well building the new electrical backbone of the future in countries where you don't have electricity. So we are building grids from microgrid. Another application is what we call the prosumer, so end user able to optimize their bill thanks to the system. And we make a difference between smart buildings and factories, because at the end it's not really the same application, but at the end we are speaking about a customer wanting to improve his sustainability footprint, his resilience, and his cost. And last application of microgrid, we'll see it as at a district level, smart district, at a utility level, can be an island as an example, and we are speaking about hybrid power system at the scale of a utility. To conclude on this introduction related to the technology, so I will speak about EcoStruxure. This is maybe something you have seen already in these 2 days. So we have an EcoStruxure for microgrid that is using the same level that I presented before, electrical integration with connected product, electrical automation with edge control, and optimization with the analytic layer. So these are the key technologies, so we are packaging them according to the 3 layers. And one thing that is as well part of, let's say, the product and important to serve the needs of the customer is our capability to tailor this for the market segment I presented before, but as well to the channel. When we'll be speaking about buildings, we'll have all the electrical resources in the same place, same topology, so we can go with standard solution delivered by partners, electrical channel. When we have a big system, a smart district, you will have a lot of electrical systems that will be in different places. So you need to have a more engineered and more customized approach. And this is something that is definitively part of the technology channel. So that's been quite fast. I hope you will be able to answer some questions, and I will give the floor to Michael to provide the big picture, the much bigger picture. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
And I put your disclaimer. It's
right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the trends that we're seeing in clean energy and distributed energy and how these play into microgrids as well. Just to give you the context, clean energy investment as a whole, these are the numbers. We collect them every year, and we've been collecting them actually back to 2004. And you can see the total new investment, net new investment into clean energy has been growing very rapidly over that period, to the point where we're at $1/3 $1 trillion of net new investment each year into the clean energy sector, a lot of which is going into capacity, mainly wind and solar capacity. You can see it's been growing. You might say, well, the growth rate was very fast over the first 7 years of that and has tapered off somewhat. That would be true. However, what's also happening is that you're getting much more value, if you like, for your investment in terms of capacity. So the costs of clean energy, as I'm sure most of you realize are coming down very rapidly, and that means that $1/3 trillion is buying you even more each year. So that's the sort of context for investment, to the point where we're now talking about terawatt industries. When I started doing this about 9 years ago, we were down at the figures for 2010. We're now at at a terawatt of solar and wind capacity combined. And you can see the shape of the curve. This is an exponential or near exponential type of shape of curve. And that's because of the relentless reduction in costs. I should say the blue area is for wind and the yellow area for solar. And some of that solar is distributed. So it's not just the type of generation, it's also the architecture of the network and the fact that more of that is becoming distributed. It's not just generation, it's storage as well. That sort of started rather later in terms of energy storage, driven actually by the economies of scale and learning effects in the EV industry to develop car batteries. But the electricity industry is taking advantage of that. And again, we're seeing the sharp uptick in terms of storage installations around the world to 8 gigawatts of total capacity, probably nearer 10 by now, because that's, I think, a 2018 figure. So this distributed element and low-cost generation are on the increase. If you look at the technology costs, one of the pieces of analysis we do a lot of is learning curve effects. We look historically at price data or cost data. It's not always easy to get, actually. Sometimes we have to do a lot of surveys to get this data. The learning curve effect is basically saying, for each doubling of cumulative volume, what's the reduction in costs that you get? And for solar, it's 28%. It used to be about 24%, so actually it's gone up. That is an extremely high learning rate. It's unlike anything we've seen in the energy industry before in terms of the rate of cost decline. It means every time you double, it goes down by 28%, gets cheaper, gets more economic, people build more of it. So you've got this virtuous circle kind of effect taking place. The same is true of wind. I mean, the learning curve effect there is about 11%. Actually, it would be higher if you added in the improvement in capacity factors. You'd probably be closer to 18 than 11 because the stuff that you're putting in is getting more efficient. And then lithium-ion battery prices are learning rate of 18%. So these are all extremely high learning rates, and they're driving those numbers that I showed a little bit earlier in terms of the take-up of generation and other things like storage. So what does that mean in relation to microgrids? Well, one of the things about a microgrid is it's highly distributed. I think there's this different view of the world, at least, or two views of the world, one of which is you have an energy system that needs to be balanced centrally. And that's the old way of doing it. And I'm not saying that isn't relevant. TSOs will have to do a lot of balancing and flexibility in their own right. But equally, you can do a lot of that at the edge. So one factor about wind and solar is you need more balancing on the system. You need something to balance the intermittency of those forms of generation. So we're starting to see aggregation of assets at the edge. And I think microgrids is a particularly interesting example because it's supply and demand and balancing in microcosm. I mean, it's doing all of that at the edge, and it's also helping to solve some of the problems of flexibility, the need for increased flexibility on the system. The good news is the resources available to do that are increasing very rapidly. So whether you look at disaggregated things like demand response, which is a form of balancing, a form of resource, and indeed microgrids can do demand response as well as supply management. It's also true of energy storage. We're seeing much more behind the meter storage, and possibly a little less relevant for this particular discussion, but the take-up of EVs, that's going to necessitate a lot more local charging on the distribution network, and also could be a resource. I mean, it could be a resource in terms of vehicle to grid, and a resource in terms of if you can influence the time that vehicles are charged. That's another way of providing flexibility. So there's a theme of balancing and flexibility coupled with low-cost energy. And I think microgrids are a kind of embodiment of all of that. So I do want to show you one slide specifically on microgrids. One thing we've done is a survey around the world. We've looked at microgrids with over 100 kilowatts of capacity. There would be many more on this chart if we took into account much smaller microgrids, but we wanted to get at the larger ones. They're anything from 100 kilowatts up to 10 megawatts or more. And you can see there's quite a lot of activity, both in terms of the number of microgrids. The blue areas are microgrids that are actually constructed, and the purple areas are ones that we know are in the pipeline. They're announcements. We've also broken it down in terms of number of microgrids and the amount of capacity that they can provide. So there's a lot of activity taking place, and this almost certainly is not a complete picture. There will be microgrids that have not been announced that we don't know about yet, that won't feature on this chart. A few things to note. There's the most activity in terms of numbers, at least, in North America. And we've seen microgrids in airports, military bases, hospitals, all those applications where there are clusters of demand are candidates for a microgrid. And in the US, because of what's happened, there's a lot of concern about resilience, or resiliency as they say in the US. So microgrids are actually, that's one of the drivers for increased resilience on the network. The other standout is China in terms of capacity. China, it's a different story. It's actually very government driven. And a lot of it revolves around industrial sites, industrial locations. And this is much more to do with the need to integrate renewables. China has a lot of renewables. It can't integrate them all into the system quickly enough. And microgrids, it believes, in one way of doing that, or at least of increasing the supply of energy that they need with all these new industrial parks opening, or industrial centres, without necessarily drawing on the core grid as much as you would otherwise need to. So that's the driver. We also see activity in certain sectors. In Australia, part of the reason that that number is high is there's a lot of mining in Australia, and we see some of the larger microgrids up to 10 megawatts or more. I have to say Europe is a little bit lower on the chart, and I think there's a reason for that, or a couple of reasons. One is there's probably a little bit less concern at the moment, at least, about resilience in Europe because the grids are in better shape, although the UK actually had a major outage, not caused by the grid, but caused by lack of generation. If you were in London a few weeks ago, you would have not been able to get home easily because they shut down the rail system as a result. So that was the first major outage that the UK's had for a long time. And it was caused by lack of generation. Several things failed and there wasn't enough reserve capacity. So we might see more attention in markets like the UK. But resilience is probably a bit less of an issue. But I do think there's potential for Europe to catch up. As you could see this as an opportunity in a sense that, and actually the US is continuing to grow as well. One thing I didn't mention, which is important, another driver, and it's particularly strong in the US, but we're starting to see it percolate into Europe, is corporates buying energy on their own account. We see an increasing trend towards that. It's very noticeable. It's more than a trend in the US. It's happening in a big way. A lot of the technology companies are building or buying dedicated energy generation, usually renewable, for their operations, partly to be renewable and sustainable, and partly because the costs can be lower as a result of doing that. So microgrids, again, is one of the options if you want to do that for a corporate, and I think we'll see more of that around the world, both in the US and in Europe. So that's...
The video. Yes, so thank you, Michael, for this presentation. I think maybe one of the questions we may all have is at the end. So there is a trend for microgrid. I presented that there are some technologies. The question will be, why end user will be interested in microgrid? And we wanted to share with you a testimony of a customer we had been using recently, this, let's say, microgrid and implementing a microgrid on their premise.
Suomalainen luonto on mulle tosi tärkeä. Se on läsnä vapaa-ajassa ja harrastuksissa, ja on hienoa, että mä voin tehdä jotain sen hyväksi myös työn puitteissa. Mun nimi on Kalle Hintikka ja mä vastaan Lil Suomi Ky:ssä jakelukeskusrakentamisesta. Päivittäistavarakauppa on osa kaikkien arkea, ja sen takia meillä on iso vastuu siitä, miten me kehitetään meidän toimintoja. Kun me lähdettiin suunnittelemaan Järvenpään jakelukeskusta, me ei vielä tiedetty, onko meidän tarpeisiin vastaavia ratkaisuja olemassakaan. Schneider Electricin kanssa me onnistuttiin löytämään sellaista. Me haluttiin kiinteistö, joka toimii kokonaan uusiutuvalla energialla ja joka oppii optimoimaan omaa energiankäyttöä niin, että myös päästöt on mahdollisimman pienet. Se onnistui yhdistämällä Schneiderin EcoStruxure kiinteistöhallintajärjestelmä ja Microgrid Advisor. Se hakee tietoa ulkopuolelta, energiahinnoista ja säätilasta ja opettaa tätä rakennusta ennakoimaan tilanteita ja optimoimaan kulutusta. Tämän mikroverkkokokonaisuuden avulla me voidaan tasata meidän energiatarpeita. EcoStruxure ohjaa kaikkea tämän talon toimintaa. Sen avulla me ollaan ensimmäisenä Suomessa yhdistetty lämmitys- ja jäähdytysjärjestelmät niin, että jäähdytyksessä syntyvä lämpö voidaan varastoida ja hyödyntää, kun sää kylmenee. Laskelmien mukaan me ollaan pääsemässä yli 70% säästöä energiakustannuksissa. Tämä kiinteistö on hiilineutraali ja me vähentää myös läheisen voimalaitoksen hiilidioksidipäästöjä varsinkin kesäaikaan. Yhteistyö Schneider Electricin kanssa on avointa ja eteenpäin vievää. Schneiderin toiminnassa näkyy myös kansainvälisyys niin kuin meilläkin. Tämä on hyvä alku yhteistyöllä ja toivotaan, että päästään tekemään lisää jatkossakin.
Okay, so we'll be moving to the panel, and before that, maybe Elena, you can present your experience and let's say insight as a project developer and operator of energy systems. Yep.
Thank you, Matthew. Thanks a lot for staying here with us today. And as Matthew asked me, I would like to introduce you our experience in ACCIONA. As many of you know, ACCIONA is a company working in the construction and in the energy sectors and working in more than 60 countries all over the world. So answering your question, we could have a nice view from many different geographies and many different customers that we are trying to help in the area of construction and energy. I'm responsible for the ESCO services for the energy service company, and working in this area we have some customers that what they want is just to optimize the use of the energy, and well, they don't know anything about microgrids. Maybe they are not technology people as we are here. But what they know is that they have a need. They need to use energy in a better way. They need to reduce the cost of energy for their operations. And of course, they don't have the experts inside the company. That is our role. The mission that we have in ACCIONA, in ACCIONA ESCO, in the energy service area, is to provide our customers with the best solutions in order to optimize the use of energy in their sites, in their installations. In that way, for us, the microgrid is a tool for delivering this set of services to our customers. And again, depending on the area where we are acting, microgrid is going to serve in one way and another. Talking about Europe or maybe US, as you said, in Europe, the grid, the distribution grid is quite good. We cannot say that the grid is not good, because especially in Spain, we have a very good ratio of delivery of energy. In that case, what we see is that many customers are willing to incorporate self-consumption in their installations, and they want to manage the use of that energy and to combine the use of the, for instance, photovoltaic system on the ceiling with the different installations they have, heating and cooling and so on. For us, as ESCO company, we need to have this type of tools to facilitate these services and to present those services in a very competitive way. because another thing that we see, especially in the European countries, is that customers, they don't want to invest in this type of systems. They don't want to care about the technology. They are not experts, as we say. So they want to have a reliable company that is able to provide this type of services for a long period of time. And if at the same time they are able to invest in those technologies, this is the right partners for them. So for us, microgrid in the European market is a very nice tool to provide this type of services. On the other side, in geographies as Africa or some countries in Latin America or countries where the grid is not so reliable, in those cases, for us, it's a good opportunity to offer a whole set of services from the beginning, from offering the energy plus all the management of this energy, optimizing the use between all the installations.
Okay. Yeah, maybe so to continue and to start maybe on the discussion. So I think you raise the point that, and Michael as well, that we are maybe a little bit surprised, all of us, because most of us are European, to see that there are so small portion of project within Europe, and we may ask ourselves, what are the drivers? So I think you answered, but as well, what can be the challenges we'll have to overcome? Because we see there are some alignment of the stars. The price of electricity is going, so the price of distributed energy resources, storage, PV is going down. We have more and more need for resilience. It's coming, starting with UK still in Europe, but it may become to other countries with a lot of wind generation, solar generation. So what can be, let's say, the challenges we have to overcome for a further adoption? It is a challenge from regulation, maybe a question for you, Michael, or it is a question from financing or for project development? And where can be, let's say, the sectors where we can see this development? So maybe, Michael, you want to start with the regulation?
Yes, sure. I think on regulation, one of the issues is flexibility markets. So if you have flexibility markets that a microgrid can play into, there's extra value to be had from that. There's also the question of what terms you interconnect with the main grid, the distribution grid, in relation to your microgrid. So I think there are some regulatory aspects. In some parts of the world, there probably a bit less in Europe, but other parts of the world, there are issues around, can you build a microgrid anyway? Does it have to be given a license? Is it deemed to be a utility? So that can slow down progress. That's another regulatory challenge. I think the regulatory challenges are probably, the thing that we haven't talked about so much is the impact of improved economics, because microgrids have been, in the past, they've been a relatively expensive way of delivering energy, although a good way in some circumstances. But I think we're going to see a relentless decline in the costs for the reasons we talked about earlier. So that's one of the ways of meeting the challenges. You need, a balance of benefits, and then the other question is, how much does it cost in the first place?
Okay.
I could add, it's not only, of course, regulation is needed, but if you see the case of Europe, and I'm sure it's the same in the US, more and more we see that the new generations are taking good care about sustainability, and we are now hearing all the time this word. In these 2 days here, I cannot see any screen where you cannot read the word sustainability. And it is true. The new generations, they are able to select one product or another depending on the type of marketing that you have on that product related to sustainability. That is one question that is going to be a key factor to adopt these type of solutions, because we would be able to supply energy in the way that we can guarantee that this energy is the best energy that you can use. I mean, maybe 100% renewable, but also you are using the right amount of energy that you need to use. What is also important, energy efficiency, okay? But the other key issue, as you said, is regulation and how we are writing down this regulation. And if you look at Europe, just few months ago, on January, 5th of January, we saw, we can read now the last directive, European directive, and if you read this directive, it's going directly to improve the role of the customer. So you read the directive and you see, okay, I'm really important in the new energy sector because I want to be an active customer. But okay, if you are normal people at the street, you say, okay, what is the meaning of this? The meaning of this is that nowadays there are different technologies that allow you to choose how you want to use the energy. But in that case, you need a partner or a company that is able to provide you with those services. Because at the end of the day, they don't care who is providing me the energy. I want to go home and I want to switch on my lights and all the stuff. But if there is a company that is able to tell me, okay, look, those are my services, I can change between this energy and this other energy coming from solar, coming from wind, and this is going to be the cost, and at the end is in line with your idea of the type of energy that you want to consume, that is going to be the key issue. And there is another thing. In this directive, we are telling them, okay, guys, you have your sites. Usually, you are looking at energy as a cost. But nowadays, you can see the different assets you have, and you can put value to those assets. And in that case, if we are able to supply them with the service of flexibility, we are going to tell them, okay, you have this amount of loads, and now I'm going to use the reduction of your loads, and I'm going to give you money for that. So not only we are, as ACCIONA or as the service provider, we are going to give them services for using the type of energy they want, but we are also going to give them services to put value on their assets. And the combination of those services would be a nice product portfolio for the final customer. And in that case, they will look at us and they will go for our products. Otherwise, we can tell them, okay, microgrid, you can do this and this, but if they don't see the value, and the value is give me money for my assets and put a nice price to my energy and the type of energy I want to buy.
Wow. I think for me, it's very, very good definition of microgrids that can optimize energy locally, but as well, asset can be used and monetized in the energy market. So it's a big takeaway. Maybe we can open the discussion, and if there are questions in the audience, raise your hand.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. My name is Jean-François, I work with IDC. Since we expanded the discussion from microgrids effectively into a flexibility market, so being able to monetize a company's energy assets on a market, my question was to you, Schneider, as well as your guests, if you see in Europe a market that is more advanced in terms of building flexibility markets to which CNI, so commercial and industrial loads and customers in one way, but also residential customers, maybe with their batteries and EVs, are able to access.
So maybe I can start, and maybe you can complement. So yeah, at the end, the question of the monetization will be from how we are optimizing the use of assets related to tariffs, but as well how we can integrate into services from the systems. And services from the system, we will make the difference between system like contingency peak. So there is a peak national, you can decide to lower it. Participation to ancillary services, participation to demand response. To a certain level, I would say that UK is one of the most advanced because you have the combination of the different mechanisms that can exist. And on our side, experience is more from commercial and industrial players rather than residential. But we have seen as well some interesting subject in other countries. The example here in Finland, the customer is participating to ancillary services with the storage in addition to time of use and demand response. So different market, but I would say yes, UK, Nordics, in France as well. So maybe you can complement.
Well, in Spain, especially in Spain, we don't have that experience because we are still defining the rules of the market. But I'm sure that in the near future we will be able to do it, and we are working to do it. And again, what is happening is that nowadays the customers, they don't have any idea about what is the potential of this service. I think the duty that we have as a company, as a service provider, is to prepare the type of services that are easy for them to acquire. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult for them. And it's what we are doing. In ACCIONA, we are providing those typical energy performance contract to our customers, but we are also preparing the new services to be able to monetize the assets of our customers. And of course, if we are able to do it here, we want to do it in all the customers we have in all our the different countries.
I agree that the UK is probably one of the leading examples. It's actually quite an interesting example as well, because the UK did have a capacity market which has been shut down for the time being, although it's going through litigation. And a lot of the capacity that was in the pipeline was distributed generation, a lot of diesel-fired generation, which attracted a lot of public criticism at the time. Had that been a microgrid and had that been balanced by, or a series of microgrids and balanced more by solar and renewable, you might not have seen the same pushback. So if that market gets reopened and if we see the need for more distributed generation, and we've got evidence there's a capacity shortage in the UK from a few weeks ago, who knows? I mean, it might actually be a really good market for. I can't say that, but
yep.
I can see it would be good conditions for microgrids.
That's a fair point.
I want one comment to that. I really like the fact you mentioned the capacity market, because I think as far as European rules are concerned, by 2025, 26, you cannot have coal anymore in capacity markets. So that makes a lot of sense.
I think we have time for another question. So if there is no additional question, maybe I can have a question that can be a little bit as well for the conclusion. So, Michael, Elena, are you optimistic? Do you think that we will change the world, we will reshape the energy ecosystem, greener, more effective?
Well, I'm completely optimistic. I'm getting paid for that, so.
No, really.
Okay. But yes, I'm most optimistic because we have the technology, and the technology is competitive. I mean, it's not a technology only in the lab, so it's a commercial technology. We have the experts, and now we have alternative ways of generation. So if you combine the supply and demand, you are able to provide the customer with the right mix to have a self-consumption and used or better use of the energy. And with the microgrid, we will be able to provide the complete set of services. So yes, I'm really optimistic because I see that the customers now, they have some drivers that are moving to acquire this type of technologies, but they don't want technologies, they want services. Again, finance is an important point, and in our model, in the model of the energy service companies, finance, the money for doing those projects is incorporated in the solution. I think it's a very attractive model, and more our customers are going for that.
Last word from you, Michael.
Well, I was responsible for setting up a team within BNF to look primarily at microgrids about 3 years ago, so I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't reasonably optimistic. But I think more seriously, it's if you look at the combination of need for flexibility, lower cost generation, lower cost storage, corporate procurement, customers, as you said, Elena, wanting more control, the need for flexibility and balancing. Microgrids address all of those, so I think it's not going to be the only solution to all those issues or challenges, but I think it's going to be a very important one.
Okay, so I think it's an excellent conclusion. I think in terms of time we are just on time, so you join me and applaud for our people. So it was I think a great panel. If you want to know a little bit more from the technology side, you can ask me, but we have also a booth. And last stuff, please leave your headset because else it can create some difficulties. Thank you very much.